Liar. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Tuesday, December 30th, 2025, and I am struggling mightily to put together the show today. I don't know. I have a difficulty admitting what's going on, but I am still struggling with the cold, and I'm trying to sound bright and upbeat. Actually, maybe it's actually working, and all right, we got to cut that crap out, and we'll get back downbeat in just a second. But welcome to 2 hours of tea sipping and lozenge slurping here on the Kagro in the Morning Show. All right, we'll try and keep that to a minimum. We'll try to keep it a clean show for you, and not give you all colds over the radio if that's possible. And if there's any way to do it, this would be the way. But I think we can make it, and it's not painful. It's just today we've added some congestion to the mix. So, you know, getting the breath in. Like if I don't drop dead halfway through the show, I guess I'll be okay. And it's imperative that we bring you a show again today because things have gotten weird again. And I guess we finally got an explanation for what is behind some of the weirdness, but we begin today's show under the cloud of I don't know who governs this country, I guess. Probably also a mass shooting as well, but I don't have the details on that one yet. But I probably could find you one if I look around, just briefly. But this morning, I guess we'll have to start with the fact that as we do our random country generator to decide who we might threaten to invade or start a war with that day, and it was all a big joke, but then we ran out of countries and figured, all right, well, we'll stay on Venezuela for a while. And then a little head fake, maybe we'll be having a war in Nigeria instead, or who knows, maybe it'll be Ukraine. We'll end up getting involved where things will get worse there. God only knows what. Greenland, I guess, could become a flashpoint. But no, Venezuela is pretty much it. So yesterday, Trump was vacationing at his weirdo sex dungeon second home in Florida, Pervalago. And world leaders continue to agree to go to the place, which is kind of weird and gross, and now they're in the Epstein files. But some of them were already there, so I guess it didn't matter very much. But he received Vladimir Zelensky of Ukraine there because Vladimir Zelensky has very little choice. If Trump says we're going to meet, and we're going to meet at a weirdo sex club, he's kind of got to go and meet him. He's a serious guy, and he's got serious problems. It's too bad that he drags him around to these weird locations, but, you can't refuse a meeting at this point. Benjamin Netanyahu, I imagine, just enjoyed the vacation and liked being around weirdos at Pervalago, and he's perfectly happy to have gone there. And the meal-based diplomacy continues. I didn't see him sitting down with Zelensky, but I'm sure there was at least a light snack going on. Lunch was, I think, the venue for the meeting with the Israelis, which, once again, even when they're at the Pervalago and not at the White House, they just set out the long table and they put out conference places with little cards and everything. But I noticed they very rarely have anything like paper, notebooks, pencils, anything like that. Normally you just sort of set the place with pads and pens and, like maybe official pens with the logo on them or something like that, and maybe a pitcher of water, a mini pitcher of water, and a glass. But everything has to be a meal for Trump. And yesterday, lunch was the venue with the Israelis, and then they had a joint press conference, and Trump said Israel can do whatever they want, and that was pretty much it. We didn't get to discussion of the write-up of the latest on the terrible plan, if it really is a plan. It certainly seems to be terrible, but if it is a plan for Gaza, it hasn't changed. Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff have an idea that they're going to build a luxury resort-based smart city of some kind, and it's going to have all the most amazing technology and living amenities, and also probably no Palestinians. That's, I guess, the plain fact of it is they too have discovered, and they've long known, it's been their MO for a long time. If you have a suit and a PowerPoint presentation, it doesn't really matter whether what you're presenting is stupid or nonsensical. You've got a suit and a PowerPoint. And that's really all it takes. Just like that's all it takes for that other weirdo security business that we mentioned yesterday to get $18 million. I've got a suit. Well, I'm not certain that guy has a suit. He had his picture taken in an undershirt, or it looked like. I'm sure it's a $300 undershirt, but it's an undershirt nonetheless. And he had a PowerPoint presentation and had named his company something from Lord of the Rings. And that's what it takes over in Peter Thiel world. But anyway, yes, Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff have this plan in their 32 pages, as I understand, 32 slides of PowerPoint, not a mention, even part of a slide at any point about what happens to the 2 million Palestinians who live in Gaza. I'm sure that if you ask them that point blank, they say, what? Nothing. They live in their beautiful new apartments. Only, no, of course they don't. And I'm pretty sure, I think this plan, we'll get to it later perhaps, at $125 billion price tag or so attached to it. I'm sure it'll at least double at some point in the next week or so as they build a golden ballroom in the middle of it perhaps. But no word in any of that as to what happens to the Palestinians. And I find it difficult to believe that these investors, whoever they may be besides the two I named, who are supposed to be working for the government at this point, but instead are investing privately. I don't know that anybody wants to put $125 billion into infrastructure, and I don't think they trust that leaving the Gazan Palestinians in place means that they get a return on their investment. I know it's terrible, and it assumes a malevolence on the part of the Palestinians, but not on the part of the Israelis. But I'm pretty sure the Israelis will be pretty happy to blow that infrastructure up too, especially if they don't put any of the $125 billion in. I mean, it might actually be a good peace plan if, they were able to leverage such that if you blow this place up again, Israel, you'll have lost billions, hundreds of billions of your own dollars. But that might be the kind of incentive that moves. It might not be, though. It's not a great bet. And on the other hand, as to the motivations of the Palestinians, they might be right to want to get rid of this crap that there's being buried under without any attachment to the issue of who has sovereignty over that land. Even if it was a separate homeland, they might want to blow that stuff up because it's terrible and Jared Kushner built it. So it's not a great plan. It's an underpants gnome kind of a plan. We're just going to say we're going to do it and big question marks and then profit as stage 3. But at least finally, this is the long-standing dream of a homeland for the underpants gnomes in the Levant may finally come to pass. All right, so I was started out with a different focus in mind. Venezuela. I don't know whether we're at war. You don't know whether we're at war. The president doesn't know whether he's the president and doesn't know whether we're at war. And I think it's becoming increasingly clear that he very badly mishandled classified information yesterday. But as you know, you can't hold the president, any president probably, to that standard because they'll just claim, oh no, I instantly declassified it in my brain while I was leaking it to you. No one more so than Donald Trump. So yesterday, how did this even work? I don't know. I've got some articles that will help explain, I guess, what the reporters call the TikTok of it. This was before TikTok was a thing on the internet. But, well, they were on the internet saying TikTok, but they meant something else. The timeline of how things happened. And pardon me for I told you there would be tea and lozenges here. And I just got to get a bit of this tea in there. Tea. Well, I forget which one it is, but maybe I'll go grab the box during a break and let you know. just as a commercial for the fantastic tea makers. I still haven't yet broken into the International Teas of the World box yet. They sealed that up pretty good. And in the limited amount of time I had pre-show to select and make the tea, I couldn't get into that box. It was a lot easier to opt for a box that was already open. But Scott had a good idea there of using the Teas of the World as a substitute for our spinning the wheel. We'll see who we invade, but it's a very limited palette in terms of invading anywhere in the world. But it's a great palette in terms of tea. Anyway, I was going to tell you that word emerged yesterday, and I'm piecing it together as we go along. The earliest indication that something had happened beyond the already out of the ordinary in the area of Venezuela. Remember, we're blowing up all of their boats, but also some other people's boats, and also it's not happening within the territorial waters of Venezuela. Not that that excuses any of it or helps make it different in any way. I guess it's got a different legal standing. I don't know. But, of course, Trump has been threatening action on land in Venezuela for some time, which now you can view as having nearly spilled the beans, but now he's actually spilled the beans. And as near as I can tell, the first word of this arises in typically Trump style. He's listening to a conservative radio host who I think, if I have this correct, is actually the guy who owns the station in New York. It's a big deal. It's a pretty major station. And it's the ABC, the ABC flagship, I guess, radio station. And the guy who owns it is a giant Trumpy weirdo, another real estate mogul from New York, coarse guy, sharp elbowed, and making a menace of himself everywhere he goes. Same sort of guy, braggadocious, etc. I don't know whether I put aside the profile I saw on him the other day, but it would have been wise to do so. I think I opted not to because I thought, another New York billionaire loudmouth. He's the guy who owns the reportedly terrible supermarket chain in New York who insisted that he would close the shops and leave New York if Zoran Mamdani were elected mayor. And then everybody else did the same thing. And now they're all out in California. All the billionaires there are saying they're going to leave too. Only nobody ever leaves. So you should probably ignore it. And I think that's probably why I ignored the profile on this guy. And plus he was as annoying as hell. And, we had so many other things to get to. So I didn't put it aside, but I guess I should have, because then it would have looked prescient. There was something about the profile that made me think, maybe. And usually we have pretty good judgment about that. Anyway, this guy owns the radio station and I guess does a show. And Trump called him and, he calls him and chit chats and brags about things and says how he's going to have a $50 bazillion ballroom. And he drops along the way that we've just taken very strong action in Venezuela. He wasn't able to describe what the target of this attack was, in part perhaps because of the classified nature of it. It wasn't him keeping the secret. It was the briefers not telling him exactly what the thing was, or him not remembering. But he was able to get out, well, we're blowing up the boats because of the drugs. And then he did the little boasting. We save 25,000 lives every time we blow up one of these boats. I'm the only one doing anything. Drug trafficking from Venezuela is down 97% since I started doing this. It's nothing ever. No one measures it like that. Anyway, I'm surprised he limited himself to less than 100. He does know how percentages work sometimes. Anyway, the best we can make out from this was that what had been targeted was some sort of loading facility, presumably in his mind, the place where they take the drugs and put them on these boats that were blowing up. Except we don't know if there's drugs on the boats they're blowing up. We don't know if there's a centralized facility where you go to pick up drugs to go out and get blown up. Presumably there's some kind of distribution system. Maybe we found out about it. So there was an explosion of some kind that took this facility out. Only No one in Venezuela was talking about it, but if it was loaded with drugs, I guess you wouldn't. But also nobody in the United States was talking about it, which was a little unusual because they love bragging about these things. So Trump, I guess, in his head said, well, yeah, I should be bragging about this. What the hell? I'll call into the local sports radio talk station guy, and I'll tell him, we blew up a thing. Oh, it was so beautiful. We totally blew it up. It was so great. And there was just no confirmation of it coming from anywhere else. And yesterday, I guess at the press conferences when he was receiving people at various meals at Pervalago, he was asked about this thing that he had said on WABC radio. And what was interesting was the jackass guy running the show and the station and the grocery chain didn't follow up at all. It would have been like a major scoop. WABC radio discovered this thing first, but they don't think to follow up because, awesome, something blew up. What else you got? And I guess that was their approach to it. So somebody asked about this thing. And I guess yesterday a reporter asked, so you're saying, did the military launch a strike on land in Venezuela and blow this thing up? And Trump's answer, as I understand it, is something like, he's being asked, did the military do it? Which, normally he said, well, something blew up in another country that we're taking military action. We're again at war with them, allegedly. Of course the military did it. And Trump says, it doesn't matter. That's his answer. It doesn't matter. It's blown up. That's what really matters. At which point everybody goes, I guess he just told us the CIA blew this thing up. What a jackass. You're supposed to find some other way of not saying that. And Trump can't do it. He can't do it. He can't handle this kind of information, which is probably why his briefers limit what they tell him. So I have a write-up or two available on this, and I thought maybe I would start with Heather Cox Richardson on it, in fact, but probably I'll follow up with that one later instead. Then I saw a New York Times plain straight-ahead news write-up on it that has in the headline, CIA conducted drone strike on port in Venezuela. So that'll clear things up. But what I really ought to start with, and I guess I will, is this report from, hold on a second. I'm going to get it open. It's in a Substack. Please forgive me. But Marissa Cabas, who has a habit of finding stories like this and getting them to market first and then not being credited for it. That's not part of the habit she's trying to develop. She's trying to be credited for it, so we'll credit her for it since no one else does. Very rarely. And the New York Times will print this in a minute and just say, we found it. But anyway, she has the confusing part of the story, which is the interesting part. Trump says U.S. bombed alleged drug facility in Venezuela. No one knows if it's true. That was the issue. Now, her Substack that I'm looking at is called The Handbasket, presumably the one we're going to hell in. Though I guess you can go anywhere in a handbasket. If you can go to hell in a handbasket, I assume you can also go to Mar-a-Lago in one. But anyway, I got to get into the passenger handbasket business. They're driven by AI. Thank you. I now have $1 billion and all of you can drop your sponsorships. It's easy. Well, I'll sponsor you. I have billions. Anyway, that's another thing to catch up on. But first, Marissa Cabas reporting in her Substack yesterday, this was the problem. No one knows if it's true. It could be, this is a hell of a subheader, it could be a lie from social media or a conflation of other stories. Either way, Americans need to know. That I can't argue with, they need to know. But I would say either way, Americans need to know that we've now arrived at that point. We have an AI president before we thought this was going to be possible. The president and his foreign policy / military policy / intelligence policy is already AI slop. We don't know if the things that he says are going on. it could be a hallucination. So, okay. By the way, if you're wondering where Marissa Kabas has been in the last couple of weeks, I don't think we're violating any health protocols here because she puts it in a note here. She's had the flu, and it took her out from publishing her newsletter for a week or so. So get vaccinated if you haven't. I wouldn't be able to do a radio show, but she couldn't even write a newsletter. That's some serious flu. So, all right, there's been an update. We'll grab it. It'll be incorporated. We'll see. It might be seamless at this point. Here's what you had to say. It started, as many stories do for me, Marissa Kabas, with a stray social media post from a random account on Sunday. Quote, Trump says this December 26th in an interview with John Catsimatidis, I don't know. It's quite a long name, but this is the guy who owns ABC and the grocery store. Catsimatidis is my best guess at this. And if you're in New York, you know already. It's you want to spell it? C-A-T-S, Cats, I-M-A-T-I-D-I-S. You can look it up. And you can ask Google how to pronounce it. But in an interview with John Catsimatidis, that Trump says that on December 26th, the day after Christmas, Boxing Day, and now Exploding Day, that the U.S. destroyed a drug trafficking plant in Venezuela. You're telling me a plant trafficked these drugs? In a manner of speaking. But so what is a drug trafficking plant? A warehouse? A production facility? That's not the trafficking. I mean, I don't think he knows exactly what this thing is. I don't know if it matters that he knows exactly what it is, although you'd like the president to know. So, we've destroyed a drug trafficking plant in Venezuela on Christmas Eve. So, on December 26th, on Boxing Day, he says basically a day and a half, 2 days ago, we blew this thing up. And what does he have to say? They have a big plant, a building from where the boats leave. 2 nights ago, we hit them hard. And, typical style. We don't know what that means, what a game of telephone on intelligence with Donald Trump means. We could never tell you. Catsimatidis, sometimes referred to as Cats for short, bad news for cat lovers, is something of a local New York celebrity, an owner of the extreme right-wing local radio station. And I was like, oh boy, what's this one? 77 WABC is 77 AM. And 77 WABC was one of the flagship normie stations when I was a kid. It's the ABC flagship in New York. And now it's a ultra right-wing talk radio platform. I mean, what are you going to do? I guess he bought it. Anyway, this was the home of Sid Rosenberg's show, we are told. I guess by way of illustrating how right-wing it is, except I don't know Sid Rosenberg. Anyway, he's the owner of the radio station, Cats is, and Baron, not infertile Baron, but it says Baron, Barron, and I think we mean one R. But anyway, Baron of arguably the city's worst grocery store chain. Haha. He came into wealth and prominence alongside Trump, and the two are dear pals, of course. So close, in fact, that Trump gave Katz a call on Friday while he was guest hosting for Rosenberg. That explains what he's doing on the air, the owner of the station, which is also weird, but it's a little different than having his own show. I figured he'd think he was too busy for that. While the two septuagenarians chopped it up, Katz brought up Trump's strikes on Venezuelan boats. Trump claimed, without evidence, that drug traffic from Venezuela is down more than 97% thanks to his efforts, and that, quote, every time I knock out a boat, we save 25,000 American lives. But most shocking of all was this admission. I don't know if you read or saw. How could you? Right? I don't know if you read or saw. They have a big plant or big facility where the ships come from. 2 nights ago, we knocked that out. So we hit them very hard. Prior to seeing the Blue Sky post around 2 p.m. Eastern on Sunday afternoon, Marissa says, I hadn't seen or heard anything about a U.S. land strike in Venezuela. Google turned up no results, although that doesn't mean as much as it used to since their search function has been degraded, she notes. And I didn't see any other mentions on Blue Sky. Even WABC Radio's write-up of Trump's Friday guest spot didn't mention his claims about a strike. It wasn't until I listened to that portion of the call myself that I was able to confirm he actually said it. How did this happen? I emailed and called WABC Radio on Monday to get clarity on what, if true, would be a massive scoop for the station, but have received no reply. I don't know how she heard or recorded the show, or maybe you can stream it online. I have no idea. But yeah, they just let that roll off like, yeah, of course there was a strike. The New York Times on Sunday night was seemingly the first mainstream outlet to report about Trump's comments on the alleged strike. American officials said that Mr. Trump was referring to a drug facility in Venezuela and that it was eliminated, but provided no details, their story said. Military officials said they had no information to share, and the Central Intelligence Agency declined to comment. The White House declined to comment, except the president of the White House was already commenting, so, that's part of the problem. Of course, I'm also old enough to know that it used to be the case that by now the opposition party would have been in the newspapers saying it was an aspirin factory or a baby formula factory or something along those lines. But nope. And also, nobody's really sure whether it happened or not. So by Monday morning, reports from NBC News, CNN, The Wall Street Journal, the Associated Press, Reuters, and other corporate outlets rolled in, but none with any confirmed information beyond what the Times had reported. CNN reported exclusively, this is, I guess, the update, at 8:30 p.m. on Monday, that the CIA carried out a drone strike earlier this month. And I guess that's gleaned from, so the military did this? It doesn't matter.
Hi, everybody. It's me, David, still your host for the Kagro in the Morning Show after all these years. Thank you for all your continuing support for the show. And if you're listening regularly and still thinking about getting on board as a supporter, well, the time is now. Patreon.com is the easiest way to make recurring subscription-style payments every month, all year round, to keep us going. patreon.com/KagroX brings you to our page where you can sign up with your monthly support. And hey, have you seen our clever new subscription tiers? It's easier than ever to sign up for, say, one crisp dollar bill for every information-packed 2-hour show. If you're the plan ahead type, there's even a year-long subscription program that saves you 15% on the cover price. Or it would if there was a cover price, or even a cover, for that matter. patreon.com/KAGROX. Thanks again for all your support.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Net Roots Radio. Yes, so I want to continue with Marissa Kabas's retelling of the events here. Where did I leave off, though? I did find the article on Catsimatidis, or whatever his name is, that I was looking for. And as it turns out, it was a interview with him before the New York editorial board, which struck me, I think it struck everybody, as a little bit weird and unusual. And maybe he was saying, it was probably him screaming about Zoran Mamdani having been elected mayor and maybe threatening to run for something himself or funding someone else's race. But I did see it. It was 12 days ago that it circulated, along with the note from frequent Blue Sky commentator David J. Roth, who from defector.com, who we read pieces from him fairly frequently. And I guess he read it and commented, amazing interview with a clownish local billionaire who is one of New York City's biggest conservative political figures and firmly in the too dumb to have a conversation with tranche of humanity. Except, so, I don't know, a week or so after that interview happened and David's comment on it, he's getting brand new scoops about covert CIA activity in Venezuela out of the president on the phone. Because who else would you give that information to but someone too dumb to have a conversation with? And I saw it, and I had it, and I'm sure there was just a million other things in the news that I really needed to catch up with, and I was just like, who wants to spend time on this guy? And now I wish I had. But anyway, I found it, and we can retroactively spend time, waste time, talking about this guy. Maybe, if we can get to that. So, where were we? We found out about the radio interview. The New York Times write something up the next day, but basically no one's got anything. By Monday morning, the rest of the mainstream bigs have written something, but nothing with anything beyond what the Times had already reported. Then CNN, exclusively, 8:30 p.m. last night, Monday night, writes, the CIA carried out a drone strike earlier this month on a port facility on the coast of Venezuela, citing, quote, sources familiar with the matter. I mean, maybe. Normally, right? The presumption of regularity tells us, yeah, I mean, we do things like that. Normally, we talk about it a little bit in some capacity, or somebody confirms something, or someone comes on and says we can neither confirm nor deny, but all right. But and then you have to go with sources familiar with the matter. Except, what if the sources familiar with the matter are two hallucinatory AI slop machines or their human equivalents? What does that mean? Did it happen? I don't know. That's the gist of this story. So, okay, there is that. Then the report, she says, does not specify the exact date of the strike. The CIA declined CNN's request for comment, but that's the CIA. Of course they're going to do that. Now, that was in bold, so I assume that was part of the update that she noted at the top of the piece. Back to the original text, Trump doubled and tripled down Monday afternoon on his claims of a strike in Venezuela during an appearance outside Pervalago, she does not call it that, alongside Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, of all people. She does not call him that either. When a reporter asked for more information about the alleged strike and if it was carried out by the U.S. military, Trump replied, well, it doesn't matter. But there was a big explosion in the dock area where they load up the boats with drugs. We hit all the boats, and now we hit the implementation area. I guess he couldn't come up with a word for what this thing was. They must have told him what it was to some extent, right? And I guess given him a word or a description that he just didn't remember, couldn't bring to mind. So this is the implementation area. That's where they implement. I'm not kidding. That was the follow-up. You might have thought I was joking. What's an implementation area, sir? It's where they implement. No, that's the quote. Well, it doesn't matter. Did the U.S. military do this? Doesn't matter. What kind of answer is that, by the way? I mean, what she's getting at is, did local allies help? She might have been hinting at whether the CIA did it or not. But, I mean, what a question if she didn't know the answer already. She probably did. Well, it doesn't matter. But there was a major explosion in the dock area. He's got that, dock, where they load the boats up with drugs. We hit all the boats, and now we hit the implementation area. That is where they implement. And that is no longer around. That's it. That's pretty funny. I mean, minus the incursion. Nobody died in the attack, so I guess that's good. I mean, in terms of like me now having to feel bad about laughing about it. But think of all the cocaine. Anyway, when pressed again about which U.S. entity carried out the alleged strike, military, CIA, he replied, well, I don't want to say that. I know exactly who it was, but I don't want to say who it was. It was along the shore. So, is he trying to say Navy SEALs? What Trump would say? In my day, we called frogmen, I guess. Now we call them SEAL men, which is strange. Maybe he thought that was it. I don't know. He doesn't want to say, but of course, I love the line, Trump. I know, but I'm not telling you. I got told, but I don't remember. While CNN's reporting on Monday night about the CIA strike in Venezuela seems like the most likely explanation for Trump's comment, and maybe I should read their report rather than the Times. We'll see. Another possible explanation was floated earlier, and it was still floating, so they shot it with missiles, saying that Trump either saw or heard. This is the most amazing part. Now we're getting to the real crazy meat of things. One possible explanation floated earlier saying that Trump either saw or heard that people online were spreading a rumor without any evidence that a fire at a Venezuelan raw chemical materials facility was the result of a possible strike by the U.S. And you could see that being the point. And I guess that helps us imagine a way to getting to the point we're at, where the president of the United States it's an implementation facility. Anyway, it's not there anymore. And if you tell them it's not a warehouse full of cocaine wrapped up and waiting to go, and boats pull up and you put a certain amount of cocaine on the boat and they go and then they get blown up somewhere. It's a facility holding some quantity of processing chemicals that I guess prepare the drugs in their minds for market, for shipment. And I guess once they're processed, they go out to, I don't know, maybe they do go to a warehouse somewhere, or they go directly onto the boats, but it's not a warehouse for him traditionally to understand it. It's not a production facility per se. It's a facility where they store chemicals for processing drugs or chemical precursors to drugs, which probably in his mind means that's got to be the fentanyl, but we don't really know, and they don't really know, or at least they don't really say. So you can see it's not one of the few simple, 6 or less letter words for Trump to understand. And he's not able to recall the phrase, it's a raw chemical material facility at which they process drugs on their way to market, that he can't do. So it's an implementation area. So this was the story. Maybe the rumors that someone had seen one of these facilities on fire leads to the guess that the U.S. had conducted a strike there, whether it was true or not. And the world suddenly panics at the possibility that the president of the United States could be out there saying the United States conducted an airstrike or some sort of attack on Venezuela, on land in Venezuela, except they didn't. What he really saw was rumors online, and no one controls what the president sees or briefs him or tells him. You can't just go on the air and say, oh yeah, I totally authorized the thing, when you may have, and if you did, we're not ready for you to say so. And if you didn't, or didn't even happen, well, let's get a lid on that too. Let's not have that happen. So again, I'll start this paragraph over again. While CNN's reporting Monday night about a CIA drone strike in Venezuela seems like the most likely explanation for Trump's comment, another possible explanation was floated earlier, saying that Trump either saw or heard that people online were spreading a rumor without any evidence that a fire at a Venezuelan raw chemical material facility was the result of a possible strike by the U.S. How the president could see an online rumor about his own country and take it at face value is something beyond my comprehension. But as a man who's displayed extreme cognitive difficulties in recent months, it's possible he just got confused. Wow. A translation of an article from Venezuelan outlet El Nacional sheds some light on the fire at the warehouse belonging to a chemical company called Primazol and the ensuing misinformation. And it says, I guess translated from Spanish, a fire recently broke out at the Primazol company located in the Zulia municipality of San Francisco. And that, of course, would have confused the hell out of Trump. El Nacional wrote on Monday. Following this incident, users on social media began to link the two events and suggested that the company may have been the target of an alleged attack mentioned by Trump. Okay, so the timeline there is wrong. He mentions a thing, and people say, Well, I saw a fire. Maybe that was it. The story links to a post from a random X account that says, according to a translation from Spanish, I wonder if this explosion at about 2 a.m. on December 24th in the warehouses, of the company Primazol, a company dedicated to the production of chemical products located in the industrial zone of the municipality of San Francisco, Zulia State, is the attack that Trump referred to on the Katz and Cosby radio program on December 26th. Wow. So in Spanish, this is done. So we're talking about a Spanish speaker in earshot of the, well, I guess maybe they're streaming online, but listening to the Katz and Cosby, and it's probably Bill Cosby too. Anyway, radio program on ABC radio in New York and connecting these two things. That's really something. Or it's a plant. I don't know. El Nacional also referenced posts from El Público TV journalist Jorman Cruz, who is local to the area near the Primazol facility. A translation of one post says, it's prudent to say that we still don't know what started the fire. The residents didn't see anything strange, no drones, no cars, no presence of foreigners. Beware of strange hypotheses, and then an ellipsis, something eliminated here, but then people were calm and no one mentioned any strange theories. Cruz added that El Público tried earlier to get close to the site of the fire, but were unable to do so due to the firefighters still working in the area. In a press release issued Monday, Primazol obliquely refuted the rumors without explicitly naming Trump. We categorically reject the versions circulating on social media that seek to damage the reputation of our founder and the organization. A translation of part of the release says, we responsibly clarify that these claims have no connection whatsoever to the incident and do not constitute official or verified information. I mean, if you really were what Trump thinks you were, which would be ridiculous. I mean, it would be pretty amazing that he got something right, is what I mean. But if you were, I assume you would do this. You would deny it. No. We're not in the business of refining drugs for shipping to the U.S. That's somebody else. You have the wrong guy. I reached out to Primazol directly about the matter, but haven't received a reply. I also reached out to the White House, the Department of Defense, you know, that place, and the House Armed Services Committee, but have received no response. After I posted the audio of Trump's WABC phone call during which he first claimed a strike in Venezuela, I was surprised by the amount of hand-waving in response. A popular response was that Trump is a serial liar, and then he probably just made up the strike story. Another explanation, based on nothing, was that someone on his team showed him an AI video of an explosion and told him that it was a U.S. land strike in Venezuela. And yet another explanation was that he was just probably confusing it with the Christmas Day strike on ISIS in Nigeria. In the absence of a concrete explanation, any of those remain possibilities. But what struck me most, no pun intended, was the incuriousness and the learned helplessness, the permeation of this idea that Trump's words and actions are so often inscrutable that trying to divine meaning from them is useless. I think this is wrong. Not only does it let Trump off the hook from explaining himself, but it also lets journalists off the hook from doing their jobs. She says our jobs. If Trump is lying about ordering a land strike on Venezuela, that is important information. If Trump did, in fact, order his first land strike on Venezuela, that is important information. If Trump believes the U.S. carried out a land strike on Venezuela based on social media rumors or his own cognitive deficiencies, and his team is running cover for him, that is important information. This isn't Trump running his mouth about how the economy is really great, actually, and how America is back, baby. But no, this is a question of whether or not the U.S. just escalated a war. Notably, the Venezuelan government has been radio silent since Trump's radio comments. A story from El País on Monday underscored this point. What is striking in this murky affair is that Caracas has not denounced the attack. or that more information from the ground has not come to light. CNN's story did not include any comment from the Venezuelan government, which of course means CBS wouldn't run it, I suppose. El País, an American-based Spanish-language daily newspaper, in case you were not clear on that. As is often the case with a story involving Trump, it's near impossible to parse fiction presented as fact from actual facts. He is equal parts reckless and stupid, and it's hard to know which is at play at any given time, if not both. When it comes to the Venezuela facility strike story, either Trump revealed a covert operation, got confused, or amplified an internet lie. Regardless, we need to know which one it was. I think she's made a good point here. Maybe I should... her links are not entirely clear. They don't stand out the way they might in other publications. She uses a very subtle underlining that denotes... There we are. This is the CNN reporting, so I can try and find their original story. Exclusive. CIA carried out drone strike on port facility on Venezuelan coast, they say. We could look at this because it's the one cited, or perhaps maybe because it's the one cited. If she read it, there's not going to be any more information out of this one. So maybe we ought to go over to the New York Times and see if they've teased anything else out since then. CIA conducted drone strike on port in Venezuela. The attack last week on a dock purportedly used for shipping narcotics, and it's even a purported attack at that point, did not kill anyone. People briefed on the operation said, but it was the first known U.S. operation inside Venezuela, if in fact it was one. And we have to be... Well, I'd like to see what the New York Times brings to bear to make us believe that it really happened and that the United States actually did it. I mean, maybe we finally fessed up to it. Let's go take a look. It's Julian E. Barnes and Tyler Pager together on the byline. The CIA, they say, just as CNN did, conducted a drone strike on a port facility in Venezuela last week, according to people briefed on the operation. Except those guys might be random accounts on X. I don't know. According to CatTurd2, it happened. A development that suggests an aggressive new phase of the Trump administration's pressure campaign on the Maduro government has begun. It does suggest that. The strike was on a dock where U.S. officials believe Tren de Aragua, a Venezuelan gang, was storing narcotics and potentially preparing to move the drugs onto boats, the people said. But down in Venezuela, they say, no, it was a chemical facility and it had nothing to do with anything and it wasn't attacked. But other than that, what's the big deal? No one was on the dock at the time and no one was killed, they said, but the strike is the first known American operation inside Venezuela. The details of the strike, which were reported earlier by CNN, fleshed out an attack that President Trump had already discussed openly, despite the secrecy that typically surrounds CIA operations. Oh, yeah, that. Speaking to reporters on Monday, Mr. Trump declined to say how the attack had been carried out or by whom, but confirmed the United States was responsible, which I guess, again, is a bit of whitewashing. In that, I mean, are they gonna... It doesn't look like they quote the doesn't matter part of the answer, which I know he wants to get there, or neither confirm nor deny, but I mean, he just doesn't have the public speaking skills to handle the question and confirm that the attack took place, give the right kind of hint that smart people will figure out it was clandestine, but I won't confirm or deny that, but I'll say no more about it, but suffice to say that the threat's been neutralized. But no, he can't say that. Did the military do it? Doesn't matter. Which also, by the way, I have to point out, why didn't he lie? I mean, I don't want to encourage him to do any more of it, but I mean, Donald Trump lies about everything. I can't believe he doesn't think, did the military do it? I don't know whether, do you think there's a benefit to saying, yeah, the military did it? Oh, I'm not certain what happens there. But I don't know why he doesn't just say, yeah, they did. And then people think not much of it. They think, oh my gosh, we're escalating a war. But it's actually, I think, worse and a dumber looking kind of an escalation if it's like, yeah, we're using secret spies to escalate this whole thing. I don't know. I'm just amazed that he like comes up with an answer that's like, I'm not going to say no, or I'm not going to say yes, because those are, either trouble or lies, because, I don't want any of those two things. And then he says instead, I don't know. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Yes, it does. Okay. Then maybe. I don't know why he doesn't do that. Anyway, this is the quote they give to him. We heard all of this in the other report, but we also heard the important context of, I don't know, it doesn't matter. There was a major explosion on the dock area where they load the boats up with drugs, he told reporters at Mar-a-Lago, his club, and residents in Florida. They load the boats up with drugs, so we hit all the boats, and now we hit the area. It's the implementation area. That's where they implement, and that is no longer around. I mean, it's only so much sane washing, I guess, but the Venezuelan government did not directly comment on Monday on the strike or Mr. Trump's remarks, but, oh dear, Diosdado Cabello, I think I got that out, and Venezuela's interior minister denounced months of imperial madness and harassment, threats, attacks, persecution, robberies, piracy, and murders. Okay, that's comprehensive. The White House and the CIA both declined to comment. That's what you were supposed to do. Mr. Trump has been warning for weeks that he was prepared to expand his pressure campaign against the government of Nicolas Maduro to land strikes. That's true. The CIA developed intelligence on a number of purported drug facilities in Venezuela and Colombia as part of the planning for an expanded campaign. Until now, the U.S. has been pressuring Venezuela by conducting military strikes on boats it suspects of trafficking drugs and seizing oil tankers under sanctions. Those operations have taken place in international waters, but the CIA drone strike took place inside Venezuela, if that's what it is. People said they didn't hear any drones, but likely on Wednesday. In a radio interview on Friday, Mr. Trump said the strike had taken place 2 days before. The intensifying campaign unites two particular targets of the Trump administration, Tren de Aragua, maybe they had something to do with it, maybe not, and the Maduro government. While the Trump administration has alleged there are close ties between the two, intelligence agencies, like the one that blew up the implementing area, intelligence agencies have cast doubt on those conclusions that there is a connection between Tren de Aragua and Maduro. The U.S. has an indictment against Mr. Maduro that dates back to the first Trump administration. Earlier this year, the United States raised the reward for information leading to Mr. Maduro's capture to $50 million. So Eric's going to go get that, I guess. The New York Times reported earlier this year that Mr. Trump had authorized CIA operations in Venezuela and ordered them to plan for a variety of potential missions. CIA regularly conducted drone strikes against terrorist targets in Pakistan, Yemen, Somalia, and elsewhere during the Obama administration, but the agency is not known to have conducted strikes recently, leaving operations to the U.S. military. And I mean, I guess if you're using the military openly, why not continue? But okay. It is not clear if the drone used in the mission was owned by the CIA or borrowed from the U.S. military, and I guess lines are gray at this point. Military officials declined to comment on Monday. The Pentagon has stationed several MQ-9 Reaper drones, which carry Hellfire missiles, at bases in Puerto Rico as part of the pressure campaign. So that's it. That's all we got on that one. I guess it developed a little bit more. Plus, we get a view of the various little bits of sane washing around the edges that the New York Times is willing to do in this case. Let me go back to, I guess, where I thought about starting was Heather Cox Richardson and her, Letters from an American, also on Substack, sadly. But before I knew I had the Times and CNN write-ups to lean on, and I just had Marissa Cabas as well, so I thought I'd stick to the commentators. But this is, again, worth considering in the context of what kind of government are we living under at this point? I'm not sure what the structure of it is, and whether or not our policies are, in fact, AI slop / internet rumors turned into reality by Trump pretending they're real. And then, I don't know, like, can he order the CIA to say that they did the thing, even if they didn't do the thing? I don't really know. And I don't know where we're going to find out from this one either, but Heather Cox Richardson has something to say about it. In an appearance on New York's WABC radio on Friday, President Donald J. Trump told billionaire businessman John Catsimatidis and co-host Rita Cosby, I didn't really think it was Bill Cosby, but it might as well have been given the Epstein files. We just knocked out, I don't know if you read or saw, it's him, that they have a big plant or big facility where they send where the ships come from. 2 nights ago, we knocked that out, so we hit them very hard. Yeah, it's a facility where, the floaty things with the drugs on them go, and they implement. Whew. Officials said Trump was referring to a drug facility in Venezuela, but as Tyler Pager and Julian E. Barnes of the New York Times reported, the White House and the Central Intelligence Agency had no comment. Military officials said they had no information to share. Pager and Barnes added U.S. officials declined to specify anything about the site the president said was hit, where it was located, how the attack was carried out, or what role the facility played in drug trafficking. I don't remember reading that. There has been no public report of an attack from the Venezuelan government or any other authorities in the region. Maybe that was updated and changed, because I do believe they've made some comment from the government since then. The reporters also noted that Venezuela is not a major producer of narcotics. It primarily traffics cocaine from Colombia. Meanwhile, Max Barak, it's B-E-A-R-A-K, Barak, Simone Posada, and Christian Trebert of the New York Times reported today, and I haven't seen that one, that in a wreckage left behind by one of the U.S. strikes on what the administration is calling narco-terrorists, of course, were bodies, charred fuel containers, life jackets, and packets, most of which were empty, although a few had, quote, traces of a substance that looked and smelled like marijuana. Oh no, not that stuff. So, not really super dangerous drugs, and also not really any of them on this boat. But, whatever. All right, well, you got to sane wash everything. All right, we'll be right back. Just a minute from now. All righty, everybody. I needed every second of that break just to try and get things under control here and make sure I need a little bit more water than this, but let's continue with what Heather Cox Richardson has synthesized on this thing. Just another reminder that still a really serious lack of physical evidence that any of the boats we've blown up, and it's upwards of 20 and upwards of 100 people killed so far, and it looks like there's no sign of stopping at this point. No one's brought corn for popping. That won't make it any worse or any better for that matter, but it's just not there. Neither is the evidence, and all they're coming up with is lots of bodies, but no drugs, at least not the drugs that they say that they're trying to interdict against. Of course, the claim is that it's fentanyl, and then everybody knows it's not going to be fentanyl if it's coming out of Venezuela, and probably not out of Colombia either. And then it turns out not even to be cocaine, which is what we thought it would be if it wasn't fentanyl. And then, all right, well, it's marijuana. All right, well, how much did we get? None, zero, because it wasn't there. There was traces of something that looked and smelled like marijuana. Though, honestly, there's a lot of people that look and smell like marijuana out there. I don't know if that smell survives the boat attack, but, well, marijuana is pretty smelly. What can I tell you? I don't know about that. And, of course, if it was marijuana, they could say it. It's traces of marijuana. It looked and smelled like marijuana. Come on. Anyway, at Mar-a-Lago today, Trump said, this would have been yesterday, I guess, there was a major explosion in the dock area where they load the boat up with drugs. I love this quote. I'm going to do it again. They load up the boat with drugs, so we hit all the boats, and now we hit the area. It's the implementation area. That's where they implement, and that is no longer around. Trump declined to say who was responsible for the operation. I know exactly who it was, but I don't want to say who it was, he said. But it was along the shore, which, of course, doesn't bear at all on who it was. Unless, like I was saying, that was his way of saying, well, that's just the Navy SEALs because it's along the shore. That was the hint. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, who usually posts video of military strikes on social media, posted nothing about the strike Trump mentioned, although at 4:01 this afternoon, yesterday, U.S. Southern Command posted that it had struck another small boat in the Eastern Pacific, killing another 2 men. The new strike means that the U.S. military has killed more than 100 individuals in an operation widely condemned as illegal. Also, by the way, over the weekend, I'm puzzled now about, was it weekend just the other day? Yeah, it was. This is Black Hole weeks, and every day feels like weekend, even when we do shows. I did see somebody making mention of the fact that Donald the Dove, as Maureen Dowd labeled him, Donald the Dove has now bombed more different countries during his presidencies than any other president in history. Just, sort of dovish, give him a peace prize kind of a thing to do. Anyway, right. So the new strike means we're up over 100 individuals killed in this operation widely condemned as illegal. Tonight, meaning last night, Natasha Bertrand, Zachary Cohen, and Jim Sciutto of CNN reported that earlier this month, the CIA struck a remote Venezuelan port facility with drones, the first known U.S. attack on targets inside Venezuela. The U.S. says that Tren de Aragua gang was using the dock to store drugs and then move them onto boats for reshipment. No one was at the facility when it was hit, and usually you kind of guard your drugs, a little bit of a thing. But okay. Sources told the CNN journalists that the U.S. Special Operations Forces provided intelligence for the operation, but a spokesperson for the U.S. Special Operations Command denied that allegation. The CIA declined to comment as well. Josh Marshall, how did he get in this? Josh Marshall of Talking Points Memo commented, it's a good commentary on 2025 that the U.S. president announces a major military attack on a foreign country, and even the straightest arrows think 50% chance it's an attack, 50% chance the president is on another cognition bender. That is a good point. Saturday morning, before the day before, Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky was scheduled to meet with Trump all right. I think she's seamlessly transitioning into her next subject of the day, which is Ukraine, which I would like to hear more about. But I want to at least warn you in a way that she doesn't, that we're transitioning at this point. I thought, does this have anything to do? Was he asked Saturday about the attack when he should have been being asked about Ukraine and changed subjects? No, that's just you, Heather. Okay. You're changing subjects. And we should get to this subject because that was another of the major international topics of the day. Plus, of course, the Israeli visit. And I don't know if they get to this one. Maybe she'll transition seamlessly into that as well. So Saturday morning, the day before Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky was scheduled to meet with Trump for talks on ending, you suppose, that's what it's supposed to be about, ending Russia's war against Ukraine, Russia launched a massive attack on Ukraine's capital, Kyiv. And also, by the way, in order to figure out what to say to Zelensky, Trump called Putin on the phone and said, what do you want me to do? The day before. Anyway, the missile and drone strikes damaged more than 10 residential buildings, killed at least one person who burned to death, and wounded 27 more, including 2 children. When Zelensky arrived in Miami for his trip to Mar-a-Lago, there were no U.S. officials on hand to greet the plane. This was a deliberate snub, especially when compared to the literal red carpet that Trump had U.S. military personnel roll out for Putin when he arrived on U.S. soil in August, followed by Trump greeting him while clapping, a military flyover, and a ride with Trump in the presidential limousine. Trump's preference for Putin was evident yesterday, too, when he posted on social media, I just had a good and very productive telephone call with President Putin of Russia prior to my meeting at 1 p.m. today with President Zelensky of Ukraine. He later told reporters that he and Putin talked for more than 2 hours, although my bet is that after about 15 minutes, Putin gave the phone to somebody else and said, just sit there and say da and take notes, I guess. I'm leaving. I'm not listening to this crap. At the meeting itself, Trump later told reporters the negotiating teams, quote, covered, somebody would say, 95%. I don't know what percent, but we have made a lot of progress in ending that war. He once again referred to his fictional claims of being a peacemaker, adding, I've settled 8 wars, and this is the most difficult one, which he didn't settle, of course. By the way, later in the day, hot mic moment as he's sitting down to another meal with the Israeli delegation. He is picked up complaining to Netanyahu, I ended 8 wars, and did they give me credit? No, of course not. What do I have to do to get the credit? I can't believe it. But anyway, and then he realizes, oh my God, I'm on mic, and he turns to the press. Did you have a beautiful lunch? Did you go outside in the beautiful sun? Why didn't everybody go outside and have lunch? Get out of here. I need to talk about secrets with my microphone on. But to return to her right up here, as Luke Harding of The Guardian noted, there is no sign that Putin is backing off from his extreme demands, including that Ukraine must give Russia much of its eastern territory. Trump's negotiators suggested such a concession would satisfy Putin, but skeptics doubt it. As White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles, as if she really was, told Chris Whipple in August in an interview for Vanity Fair, the experts think that if he could get the rest of Donetsk, then he would be very happy. But she said, Donald Trump thinks he wants the whole country. Even Trump knows it. Russia's second invasion of Ukraine in February of 2022 has lasted almost 4 years. And as Russian troops have routinely attacked civilian areas and civilian infrastructure, the damage to the country has been extreme. After meeting with Zelensky, Trump answered a reporter who asked whether Trump had spoken to Putin about the reconstruction of Ukraine. I did. They're going to be helping. Russia's going to be helping. Russia wants to see Ukraine succeed. Once, it sounds a little strange, but I was explaining to the president, President Putin was very generous in his feeling toward Ukraine succeeding, including supplying energy, electricity, and other things at very low prices. So a lot of good things came out of that goal today. Yeah, pricing structures. Terrific. Quite literally, Russia invaded Ukraine and continues to smash it. As former Representative Adam Kinzinger, Republican, you may remember, of Illinois, posted on social media, with all this talk of how to end Russia's war against Ukraine and the ceasefire, keep this in mind. If Ukraine ceases firing, Ukraine will cease to exist. If Russia ceases firing, the war will cease to exist. True, and a good point. In his comments to reporters, one passage perhaps shed more light on events than Trump intended, defending the idea that Putin, who is bombing Ukraine in an unprovoked assault, wants peace. Trump said, I saw a very interesting President Putin today. I mean, he wants to see it happen. He wants to see it. He told me very strongly. I believe him. Don't forget, we went through the Russia hoax together. And he'd call me and I'd call him. I'd say, can you believe the stuff that they're making up? And it turned out we were right. They made it all up. And despite that, we didn't get into wars or we didn't get into problems. But we weren't able to trade very much or any of that, which was a shame because, a lot of success could have been had by trading with Russia. They have a great land, great minerals and other things. And we have things that they want very badly, but the Russia hoax, which is a terrible made-up fictional thing by Crooked Hillary and by Adam Shifty Schiff and bad people, sick people, they made it up. It was all a made-up hoax. But of course, the idea that Russian operatives worked to put Trump into the White House in 2016 wasn't a hoax. The Senate Intelligence Committee, chaired by a Republican, unanimously concluded that the Russian government engaged in an aggressive, multifaceted effort to influence the outcome of the 2016 presidential election. And further, Trump campaign chair Paul Manafort's close relationship with Russia-aligned oligarchs in Ukraine meant that his proximity to Trump created opportunities for Russian intelligence services to exert influence over and acquire confidential information on the Trump campaign. Taken as a whole, Manafort's high-level access and willingness to share information with individuals closely affiliated with the Russian intelligence services represented a grave counterintelligence threat. In 2016, Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton would not consider lifting the sanctions placed on Russia after its 2014 invasion of Ukraine's Crimea, Although Republicans at the time supported those sanctions, it was not clear that Trump was as firm. Lifting sanctions was a part of the story of Russian support for Trump in 2016. The Senate committee and special counsel Robert Mueller put more of the story together, explaining that in the summer of 2016, Manafort and Russian operatives discussed a plan to resolve the ongoing political problems in Ukraine by creating an autonomous republic in its more industrialized region, eastern region of Donbass, and having Russian-backed Viktor Yanukovych, the Ukrainian president ousted in 2014, elected to head that republic. The Mueller report continued. That plan, Manafort later acknowledged, constituted a backdoor means for Russia to control eastern Ukraine. All that is required to start the process is a very minor wink or slight push from Donald Trump, that is DT in the memo, saying he wants peace in Ukraine and Donbass back in Ukraine. And a decision to be a special representative and manage this process, wrote a Russian operative. Okay, so that's the plan at that point. According to the Senate Intelligence Committee, the men continued to work on what they called the Mariupol plan until at least 2018. Trump has continued to pressure Zelensky into accepting that plan, so far without success. But Trump's statement to reporters also suggests that with Russia's economy crumbling under the weight of 4 years of war, Putin is desperate to grab Ukraine's industrial regions and get rid of the sanctions under which his country has staggered since 2014, and especially since his second invasion of Ukraine in 2022. In late November, Russia began to sell its gold reserves in order to fund its budget. Trump told reporters that he had another very good talk with Putin this morning. He wants the gold, I guess, after his Sunday meeting with Zelensky. So he sandwiches Zelensky in there between Putin calls. Whether because of Trump or Putin's weakening position or both Trump and Putin appear to be eager to close the deal. All right. Thank you very much to Heather Cox Richardson for that entry. Now back over to Instapaper. And, yeah, a good question. Next, what to share with you next? I think maybe at this point, maybe we go over here to the piece I pointed out, having seen earlier but not shared with you earlier, although I wish I had. The New York Times editorial board's own Substack is where they report on this meeting with John Catsimatidis. And I'm looking for a little bit of insight about why did they meet with this guy at all? Is he running for something or what? The New York editorial board's interview with businessman John Catsimatidis. And I guess it was meant, I suppose, to fool you. The New York editorial board. Wait a second. What is the New York editorial board? It's not the New York Times editorial board, I now realize, which would have been extraordinary, I guess. I don't know what the New York Times editorial board is, but they have a Substack, and I don't know, maybe I should do some clicking and figure out what this is. The New York editorial board is a group of veteran journalists interviewing candidates, elected and appointed officials, and other New York civic leaders, they tell me by way of introduction in their About page. But I don't know whether they're veteran journalists of the New York Times or something else or what. But I don't know if we'll get around to the why necessarily, but it's certainly pretty weird. And this guy appears to be pretty... frankly, he looks like a Russian mobster, to be honest. What does a Russian mobster look like? Go take a look. See for yourself. He's not Russian. I can't speak to the rest of it. John Catsimatidis, a businessman, Republican, political donor, radio host, and station owner. 2013 candidate for New York City mayor. There was at least that. Donald Trump ally and former Curtis Sliwa employer. Spoke with the New York editorial board on the morning of December 11th, 2025. Participating journalists here, in case you know or recognize any of them, are Nicole Galinas, Josh Greenman, Alyssa Katz, Ben Smith, Liana Zagari. And I think some of those names ring a bell, but, you know, I'm bad with that stuff. Catsimatidis was joined by Richard Weinberg, a former judge and current radio commentator on 77 WABC, the station owned by Catsimatidis' Red Apple Media. And here is the full transcript of this interview and exchange. Ben Smith, whose name I would say I recognize, except I don't know how many Ben Smiths there are. Thank you guys for taking the time to do this. Introductions, concluding with Nicole Galinas of Manhattan Institute and the New York Times. So there's definitely some New York Times connection here, but also by way of Manhattan Institute, which tells you something too. John Catsimatidis says, are things getting any better there at the New York Times? Ben Smith then announces, we're on the record. I'm not going to answer you. And he is, and I assume, the Ben Smith that we're talking about or thinking of. John says, I don't want to get you in trouble. I mean, look, I was very good friends with Arthur Sulzberger, and we always used to get together, and I thought there was more common sense those days. By the way, just as an aside, on my way to finding this article, searching on Blue Sky for Catsimatidis' name, I first hit upon a Business Insider article from when? I don't know. I guess I'll open it up and take a look. July of 2021, which is headlined, Billionaires Carl Icahn and John Catsimatidis appear in Jeffrey Epstein's 1997 address book. So you should know that as we go into it. So again, hey, back in the old days, I was good friends with Arthur Sulzberger too. And whoa, he's not in the Epstein files or something. Anyway, Josh Greenman then asks the question, what do you think about the role the New York Times editorial board played or didn't play in the mayoral race? It's interesting that it's our first question. What do you think about how the New York Times editorial board does things? Because we just made our own editorial board. We didn't like it, so we didn't limit ourselves to the New York Times. We're just, an editorial board. Why? Who asked you? Nobody. But I don't know. I guess we're not on the editorial board anymore at our own papers, or we don't control them. So we control this one, and we decided to talk to you. So what did you think about the Times editorial board playing or not playing in the mayoral race? And Catsimatidis says, the truth? We weren't paying attention to them. I mean, did they finally say? Where'd they go? Cuomo? So I don't know whether there was anything to pay attention to, but interestingly, he just, lets him know. I don't care. I wasn't paying attention. Like I don't watch speeches, I guess. Josh Greenman says, they kind of went anti-Mamdani, I think, right? In the primary, they were anti-Mamdani. Richard Weinberg says, in the primary, they were anti-Mamdani. They said he wasn't experienced and qualified to do the job. November, I don't remember them saying it. Or November, I don't remember them saying anything. I think they started saying they weren't going to have anything to do with local politics. Which, imagine the New York Times saying that. What do we care, right? John Catsimatidis, he again says, everybody was looking towards me on that mayoral race with Curtis Sliwa. We had zero control over Curtis. Curtis was off on his own. Josh Greenman, did you try? John says, he doesn't talk to us. Sid Rosenberg and me, which are the big political guys, I guess, and let alone Greg Kelly's a big political guy, and Dominic Carter. I mean, we got everybody. The president originally said that he thought that was the best way to go. He told me, like, what are you even asking? What are you saying here? Josh Greenman says, whoa, what was the best way to go? Go with Cuomo. When was that? Months ago, 1 or 2 months before it all happened. And I took the position of anybody but Mamdani, And I said to Curtis, if you're showing progress, we're going to be with you, Show that you have the ability to win. And I said the same thing to Andrew. The anatomy of what the heck happened, right? What? Okay, I guess. Nicole Galina says, do you think there should have been a Republican primary? I think if you go back long enough, if I thought this mess would have happened, I would have run. But everyone thought Eric Adams was a sure thing. In a traditional Democratic city, where did Mamdani come from? Lots of rumors around that of foreign money was involved. Probably was. Ben Smith says, do you have evidence of that? That's quite a thing to say. Are you saying there's no doubt about it, or you don't think so? Well, you made the assertion. How naive are you? You made the assertion. What's the evidence? All right, I apologize for saying that, but this is a truth room, and I'm giving you my opinion. I know, right? It's an implementation room, and I'm not even implementing over here. Alyssa Katz says, I will say the New York Post attempted to make the case, and I think came up extremely short. I think that covered it. And John answers, the case was that if there's foreign money involved and he didn't know about it or it couldn't be proven, there was no case, okay? I'm just telling you the facts. Well, by that standard, Eric Adams had significant foreign money in his campaign, says Alyssa. But that's nickels and dimes compared to this guy. I don't think there's evidence of that. I'm telling you reality, all right? In my opinion. You get the sense of who this guy is now? Okay. I mean, I think that's probably enough. But I don't know. Is the next thing funny? Nicole Galinas. Cuomo raised a lot of money, and the money didn't help Cuomo. So Mamdani had a connection to the voters. Cuomo ran a terrible campaign. He felt at the beginning of the primary. So that was one of the reasons I didn't run, because I'm not going to run against Eric Adams, you know? He was going to win in the normal course of business. Mamdani came out of nowhere. He went from 1% to 40%. Ben Smith says, just to go back, how close did you come to running? Did you cut ads? Did you think about details? No. Alyssa says, yeah, and you just said yourself that you would have run. How would you have beat Mamdani? Well, no, this is pre-Mamdani. Josh Greenman, what's the profile of a Republican message that could have beat him and keep Cuomo out? Well, don't forget, I'm not necessarily a Republican. I was a Bill Clinton Democrat. Bill Clinton couldn't get a nomination right now, you know? I believe in common sense. I believe in common sense no matter what you do in life. Whether you want to put a Democratic word on your head or a Republican word on your head. And that's what it comes down to. You know, so kind of a genius, really, is what I'm saying. I don't know if he sounds like this either, but come on, of course he does. Ben Smith says this is a city that elects Republican mayors. They elected Rudy, elected Bloomberg. I ran last time in 2013 as a Republican and Republican/liberal. And I had the Liberal Party nomination. And my mistake, I was urged, the Republicans were pushing me to pull out because of LOTA. Okay. The liberals were telling me, stay in. And in retrospect, you never know. Maybe I should have stayed in. Ben Smith. But do you think there's something wrong with the Republican Party, that there aren't a bunch of good candidates? Nah, they don't have the ability to raise enough money. I would say the decent Republican candidates, unless they put up their own money, like Bloomberg, he looked at it as an alternative to the Democratic line. Josh Greenman. But there were millions in Super PAC dollars supporting Cuomo's campaign, so why wouldn't some of those millions follow along? But you don't spend it wisely. If you let the consultant spend it for you, then you're in deep crap, you know? A lot of people that gave Cuomo money felt it wasn't spent wisely. So who's responsible, Nicole asks, for building a Republican Party infrastructure in New York State and New York City where we would have a bigger field of potential candidates and raise money? Why are they asking them these sensible questions? It's dumb. We'll give one more answer before we jump out. You've got the picture of this guy. Well, the last decent governor we had for Republicans was George Pataki, and he was a very, very decent person, liked by both sides, and he's still a decent person. I jokingly said to him, let's run one more time. But New York has changed. In the last 5 years, however you want to say, we've been migrated, invaded, or whatever you want to say. Of all the migrants that came in, that voted in the last election. Wait a minute. Josh Freeman, how did migrants vote in the last election? You ask, you tell, you find out. What do you think? What kind of answer is that? Josh Greenman, put something behind that. What do you think? I'm asking you. What do I think? I think more people voted than should be voting. Alyssa Katz says, what's your evidence of that? Listen, I grew up on the streets. I'm a street guy. I get the buzz. You want to know the truth? That's the truth. You want to say, where's the evidence? You're not going to find evidence, okay? Richard Weinberg, who he brought with him, the demographics in this town totally changed. You have about 1 million people of Asian or Muslim background, okay? So that changed it. So the old days where you had a balanced ticket of an Irishman, an Italian, and a Jew, those days are gone, okay? Yeah, they are. So the demographics have changed. So yes, why you're not getting a Republican Party, it's a different demographic. Different demographics, I understand. So it's a different assertion then, says Josh. John answers, I think there's got to be voter ID. You want to know, you want a fair and square election? I think there has to be voter ID. Alyssa Katz says the Board of Elections is equally divided between Democratic and Republican leadership and administration. The Republican Party has a very hands-on approach with registration, with the polls, with supervising the polls. At what point do you think there would be a point of failure in which you had somebody who's not a citizen, not eligible to vote, suddenly able to vote in that position? At the voting booth. At the voting booth. That's the answer. At what point in the whole system do you think this? Well, when it happens, the implementation place, when they implement the thing, what's wrong with you? How come you can't see this? You get the idea? Wow. All right. Well, I'll scan the next 2 minutes and see if there's anything really funny left.
Sup, fam? It's your boy Darwin, aka Darwin_Darko, aka the most reasonable man in America, aka KITM's senior black correspondent. You might remember me from such recordings as Spacemen vs. Space Cadets and We Need to Talk About Joe Biden. Today, I want to bring you good news about that thing you've been struggling with. Do you suffer from giving too much of a damn? Do you turn on the series of tubes and find yourself outraged at the particular way some news organization strung some sentences together only to realize, nope, this is not some fictional hellscape? Well, guess what? You no longer have to accept the life of giving too much of a damn. You can do something about it, because even you, yes you, can be a show contributor. Now I know what you're thinking. Hey, Mr. Most Reasonable Man in America, I'm not some professional podcast talking guy. Don't worry about it. Do you have a smartphone or some other electronic recording device? Well, that's all you need. You too can have a segment where you can read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Fair warning though, side effects may include general punditry, having opinions and hot takes, getting stuff off your chest, and hearing your own voice. If your recording lasts longer than 5 to 7 minutes, please consult kagrox@gmail.com. That's KAGROX@gmail.com.
Alrighty, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We got one more segment left to go. This is a very, very long interview, or at least it scrolls on forever. And I can't promise you that the entirety of it is either as entertaining or as revealing as all of this, because it was literally too much to even scroll through in the break, the time that we had. But I think it actually was important in my view. Now I'm going to justify this after the fact, I guess, but it was important to go back and give you a sense of who is this guy and what's he like. I'm serious though. I think it was important to do, because if you're still puzzled as to, well, how could it really be that I guess I kind of understand that Donald Trump would be susceptible to seeing something on social media and then unfiltered decide that it was a real thing, or decide that it was an idea that he wanted to try. I mean, this really could have happened in any number of ways. Cat Turd and libs of TikTok could have said, you know, it would be great, we should blow something up in Venezuela, maybe a dock where they load the boats up, maybe an implementation area of some kind. And Trump could have seen that and said, yeah, we should do that, and then do it. But then also the possibility that he just sees somebody speculating on Twitter or wherever and says, either that sounds cool, or I'm going to make myself sound like an insider. And I have knowledge of what that did and who did. I'm not going to tell you, but I'm going to say that it really happened. And I guess that, and then the question of why, when this gets blurted out in a radio interview, is there no follow-up and no, hold on a second. Are you saying there's been no reporting about this? Are you announcing right now the first American strike on land in Venezuela in this ongoing, I'm sure he believes, war with Venezuela? It doesn't occur to him, because this is the kind of idiot we're talking about. This guy is a total lunkhead, right? I mean, I like lunkheads. They're fun. They're interesting to talk to. But I guess you could see how these guys, A, get along, and B, how you could elevate something with the trappings of officialdom and the presumptions of regularity that surround so many things. A guy in a suit who's the president of the United States speaks to ABC News, sort of. ABC. the American Broadcasting Company's flagship radio station, and says there's been an attack there. And, the problem is there's two sets of 3 toddlers in a trench coat on both sides of this conversation. But the trench coat, one of them has the seal of the President of the United States, and the other one has the ABC on it. And now we all have to pretend this is a real thing, even though it's quite obvious there's 2 incompetent wackadoodles doing the talking here, or maybe 2 AI chatbots talking to one another. The fact that these things are being said by people whom the Constitution, on one hand, demands we take seriously, even though our common sense tells us otherwise. And I don't know what tells us that we're supposed to take ABC radio seriously just because, but there is such a thing. There's societal reasons for doing so. They're long gone, but here we are. And then on top of all of that, this collection of people, I don't really know very much about them, who I guess they're not satisfied at sitting on the editorial board at the New York Times, or maybe they no longer sit, or maybe they never got a chance to, and they want to have their own editorial board, so they put it together, and we'll be taken seriously. And then I don't know who else they've interviewed, presumably lots of other people, and there's been lots of news insight, but somebody said, we should talk to this guy. And, 5 minutes into the conversation, it becomes clearly it's going to be a waste of time. A lot of people voted who shouldn't be allowed to vote. Migrants and stuff. What? Do you have any evidence of that? Evidence? There's not going to be evidence. It's a crime. What do you think they're going to... They think they're taking notes on a criminal conspiracy over here? Oh! I don't know. Whether he really uses the Andrew Dice Clay or not. But hey, I think in my head, this guy sounds like... I think there's a tape. We should probably play it just to see what it's like. See if I'm right or wrong about that. It would be really funny if he had a very high, squeaky voice like we imagined for, who was it? Which of the journalists was it? We were tagging with that. I'm sorry, I can't remember, but you probably don't want me saying about it anyway. So, anyway, my next question then is why this group of serious people don't realize they're talking to an idiot. And maybe they do, but I don't know why this interview goes on for so long. Maybe it's just so entertaining. They did it for clown value, I guess. But then they ask him, right, you say migrants voted. What's your proof of that? Hey, proof. What do you want? All right, well, listen, the Board of Elections runs a tight ship. You got to show ID to register. They have watchers at the polls. They supervise things when they check in. Where do you think this failure is coming that non-citizens are getting through? Because there's a lot of checks. At the voting booth. For your father. I don't know. It's just a weird... Listen, at the voting booth, where do they do it? Where are they doing this cheating? At the voting booth. How do they get to the voting booth? I don't know. What are you asking me for? Why are you breaking my balls? I don't know. It happens, all right? I'm telling you. It's fact. Is it fact or opinion? I'm giving you my opinion. I'm an opinion guy. He doesn't even stick to his guns about it being fact. Okay, so the follow-up there to this situation, I said I'd come back to it just because, again, just to give some sense of how could you go on ABC and fabricate this thing from top to bottom. Is that a real possibility? With these guys, yes. So he says, at the voting booth over here. That's when Josh Greenman says, hey, can I ask you, if somebody went on the air at 770 WABC, 77 for short, but okay, and he says, hey, my hobby, my smallest company and my hobby. I thought supermarkets were your hobby. It's on the way out. All right, so every time he has a business, I'm going to leave New York City because it's so hard to run a business. Which business? This one? This one's hardly staying afloat. ABC, it's a piece of garbage now. You wrecked it. Oh, that one, that's my hobby. Well, what do you mean? The supermarkets, they're also failing. That's my hobby too. What's not your hobby? I don't know. I'm giving you my opinion over here. So I thought supermarkets were your hobby, says Ben Smith. John says, it's on the way out. Josh, back again. Would you? So he's asking, if somebody went on your radio station, would you have no qualms about them going on and saying, migrants voted, and that's what swayed the election? John says, I have no qualms about saying that I think that, in my opinion, a lot of people voted that shouldn't have voted. Again, they can't pin them down for this. But maybe to get back, like Judge, the guy who came with him, Ben Smith, we'll just have to leave it there. No, you don't. I see how long this transcript is. You got plenty of room. Maybe to get back, like Judge, you were saying there's a lot of Asian immigrants in New York. A lot of Asian immigrants to New York, for instance, many of whom voted for Trump. And I think the question Nicole was trying to get at is why can't the Republican Party on a local level seem to be competitive with voters who I think are pretty open to voting for Republicans? And John butts in and he's got an answer. What is the registration between Republicans and Democrats? Ben Smith says, that's like 6-1, right? It's overwhelmingly Democratic. Alyssa says, well, and a lot of people are registering with neither party. John jumps back in again. A lot of business people want that influence. They give to where the influence counts. Business people try to be smart. You got a long way to go, but okay. And they're not going to, if you go back and check the rolls of how many checks Donald Trump gave to Democrats, a lot. Here's Richard Weinberg weighing in. Why don't you take a look at the city council? Look at the demographics of the city council. That'll tell you a lot about where the city's going. Nicole Galinas. But isn't the Republican Party responsible for reaching out to new demographics, just as they did with the Irish, Italian, and Jewish? Richard Weinberg says, absolutely correct. But to John's point, this is overwhelmingly a Democratic state. You have pockets where you have Republican strength. That's Nassau and that's Suffolk and maybe a few places upstate. It's still true that if you want to win the governorship, you're going to have to win somewhere between 30 and 34% in the city, okay? If you're going to be a Republican. That's why Zeldin failed to do that. So the demographics are against you. You have a changing demographic. That's wink, wink, brown people. Look who's getting elected to the state legislature, the assembly, the Senate, and certainly the city council. Not only are you looking at the demographics, but you're looking at the ideology. The ideology is far left. And remember, John always introduced me on the show. I'm the House Democrat. David Patterson and I are House Democrats. I'm still a Democrat. Oh boy, maybe we should think about that. John says, common sense Democrats. But the point is the Democratic Party's under siege. It's being taken over by the DSA types and the Working Families Party. They drive the agenda. They win the primary. They're better organized. They're better funded. So the fight, frankly, in my humble opinion, for the survival of the city is you either have to win the Democratic Party. The Republican Party's not going to be the savior of the city. So just give up on the Republican Party, Nicole asks. Although actually the other question there is, why is, you hear what you're saying, right? Oh, no, we're being taken over by people who drive the agenda, win the primaries, are better organized and better funded. Yeah, that's right. You got that part right. So why just give up on the Republican Party, he's asked. I didn't say that, but don't count on them being the savior of the American election. Josh Greenman says, I'd like to bring this back to Mr. Catsimatidis. If the theory is that the Democratic Party's been taken over by the far left, so the idea is then that theoretically creates a big opening for Republicans. John says, I was a common sense Democrat. Look, what I'm trying to ask is, sketch your profile of the Republican candidate who, if it's a one-on-one race, can beat Zoran Mamdani. Who is that person? What does that person say? What is that message? John says, quality of life in New York, which is what Mamdani said. What do New Yorkers care about? They care about quality of life. Josh says, and so that's basically what Cuomo runs on. Really? But he can't win simply because Curtis was there? I don't know that Cuomo actually ran on that. But all right. They have very different ideas about quality of life, though. Zoran Mamdani thinks, well, what about people being able to afford a nice apartment and to be able to go shopping for food, and you can live here and work here even if you're not a billionaire, because billionaires need us here to run the city on a day-to-day level, and why can't that be comfortable and nice for regular Americans? And their view of quality of life is, hey, I'm Irish, Italian, Jewish, and I've been here for, 3 or 4 generations, and I'm uncomfortable with the brown people around me, and I want them to be around to clean the toilets and stuff, but at night, and then go back inside during the day. Quality of life. Okay. No, it doesn't go like that. All right. I mean, there's more, And I imagine that it's all just as entertaining as the rest of it, and I'm going to read it off the air. And I guess if something strikes me as particularly hilarious, I'll let you know, but I don't know. My justification for all of this is now you can see how if you put, this is like putting two crazy drunk Furbies together and just setting, I guess we just saw a video of that, of two chat bots that somebody had on their phone. One begins a conversation with one of them, and then they get the answer, but they turn on another phone with a different chatbot and then let the two chatbots talk to each other, and nothing gets said. It just goes around and around in circles, except they have to be racist, drunk Furby chatbots. And then you get, I guess I wouldn't have predicted that what comes out of it is one of them spills the beans on and or hallucinates a CIA strike in Venezuela and says it happens. And the other one says, oh, yeah, that's cool. Hey, you remember that chick that Epstein introduced us to at Studio 54? No, I don't remember anything ever. I don't remember where to go to the bathroom in the house they got me living in. That's why they have to hang signs outside. All right, well, anyway, in the meantime, of course, he's having other people take care of business. What business is it that's being taken care of? I thought I ought to read you a little bit about that. I mentioned that there's the Gaza plan, and it continues on. I don't know if I have like a normal American news site write-up of it of late. Maybe they are all just bored by it, or maybe they have written it up and I haven't seen it along the way because so many other crazy things are happening. But I happen to have in front of me, someone must have been circulating on Blue Sky, the Sky News Australia report on this from the other day. Shane Galvin is the name of the right. Oh, in fact, they're running a New York Post story about it. So, okay, very interesting. It comes from the New York Post, which is even worse. Kushner, Witkoff draft a $169 billion proposal to develop Gaza into, quote, smart city with luxury resorts. And the U.S. is footing $91 billion. Interesting. And the first thing that you need to know is this is running in Australia, and they have recalculated into Australian dollars. And it is not that many American dollars, but it's slightly less. I think they put about 129 or so billion American dollars. Trump administration representatives, the subheader says, have just revealed a grandiose $169 billion plan to rebuild war-torn Gaza into a futuristic international destination dubbed Project Sunrise, which is amazing because, of course, if anything, they're probably most famous for their sunsets, where they would have an unobstructed view, but whatever. Sunset makes it sound like it's the end. Sunrise is the beginning, the dawn of a new day. Okay, fine. Anyway, this is a December 22nd piece, or at least it's on the 22nd that it runs in Australia. It may be considerably older, I don't know, from the New York Post. But just to give you an idea of what's going on here, Trump administration representatives have just revealed this grandiose $112 billion, and it is $169 billion in Australian dollars, plan to rebuild war-torn Gaza into a futuristic international destination dubbed Project Sunrise. The 10-year development plan, and it would have to be, drafted by first son-in-law Jared Kushner, U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, and two top White House aides, is currently courting investor countries with a 32-slide PowerPoint presentation detailing the bold plan to renovate burning rubble into beach resorts. It would have to be a bold plan, don't you think? And, I mean, I guess this is just a great example of if you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. If you're a real estate developer, everything looks like a real estate development plan. Gaza would see the development of luxury hotels, high-speed rail, and AI-optimized smart grid features. What are they? Hey, the voting booth. I don't know. It's a computer. You know, it's got, what did I say it was? Smart grid. So, you know, grid, but smarter, I guess, from AI. Oh, and we all get crypto or something. I don't know. Isn't that what AI is? That's different? Okay. I'm being told it's different. Gaza would see the development of luxury hotels, high-speed rail, AI-optimized smart grid features that would revolutionize the small slice of the coveted Mediterranean coastline into a bustling metropolis, the Wall Street Journal reported. Gaza's destruction has been profound, and it was Wall Street, I think, Journal, ran these articles first, and I didn't get them because I didn't subscribe to that one. But anyway, Gaza's destruction has been profound, but we believe what lies ahead is not just restoration, it's a chance to develop a gateway of prosperity in the Middle East with state-of-the-art infrastructure, urban design, and technology, the executive summary slide read according to the outlet. Of course, there are already other new gateways of prosperity in the Middle East, and a lot of them are in the countries whose sovereign wealth funds are going to be hit up to pay for this one. And I don't know if they're going to want to necessarily, because I know Dubai and Abu Dhabi and all the rest of them have spent an awful lot of money to make themselves the gateway of prosperity in the Middle East. But I guess it's only approachable by water from the west, whereas this one will be approachable from water from the east. But they're not really that worried about approaching by water. Although I suppose it's possible that there will be more likelihood of cruise ships in the Mediterranean docking at a rebuilt, if they can make this thing work, Gaza, versus, Abu Dhabi and Dubai. You're really having to sail. You're not going to take a cruise ship past Yemen, right? It's not happening. Okay. Anyway, it's a kind of a dumb dream, but there you have it. But it is interesting also, I guess, just as if you were trying to get a company funded, like let's say a company that you didn't know what it did or what its product was. I wish I had time to read you that article. And you needed money from, I got a meeting with Peter Thiel and Mark Anderson. Okay. What's the product? I don't know. What's the company name? I don't know that either. Give me one of the books from Lord of the Rings, open a page and put a finger down. And like, don't pick and, but, the, right? We don't want that stuff. Or Bilbo. I'm not calling this Bilbo or whatever. Like, give me something obscure. We'll call it that. Sauron. That's not obscure. And it's the bad guy. Did you read the book? I don't know. I don't care. The meetings, I only have 5 minutes. I have to get a name. We're calling it that. And then lo and behold, it works. I don't know. I don't know why. That's just the way it is in this world. The people with money, they like Lord of the Rings. You name your thing Lord of the Rings, they're going to give you money. Same thing here. What are we going to do with Gaza? I don't know, but I'm connected to the sovereign wealth funds in the UAE and Saudi Arabia and Qatar and maybe one or two other places. What do you guys, clearly you think stuff like developing high-tech resort areas on coastline that was previously, undeveloped and primitive in some cases. Like really primitive. They're not doing this for Yemen, by the way, I noticed. But, just now there was nothing going on there in particular. They just built it out of nowhere because they had billions and billions of dollars at their disposal. That's not what was there in Gaza, but now it's reduced to a primitive state because nothing's standing. But I guess basically if you think you're going to get money, I guess if you were going to Peter Thiel and Mark Anderson about it, you would say, I'm calling it Rivendell. Is that right? I don't know. And you would get money. What's going to be in it? Oh, hi, Saudi Arabian Sovereign Wealth Fund and UAE Sovereign Wealth Fund. It's going to be artificial islands and luxury hotels and high-speed rail and stuff like that. Oh, we love that. I know. You built one yourself. Right. I stole the pictures from your thing and I AI'd them into Palestinian stuff and I put it in the PowerPoint. Great idea. We'll take it. Okay. That's how you do it. A total of the total $112 billion cost would be spread out over 10 years, with the U.S. agreeing to cover $60 billion in grants, $91 billion in Australian dollars, and guarantees on debts, which is just Jared Kushner using his father-in-law to say, can we at some point say that the United States Treasury will back up part of this or give me back the money or give me $60 billion in all this so that I can get the other guys to give us the other half. Sure. So straight transfer to Jared Kushner from right out of the Treasury. Reimagining Gaza as a smart city with tech-driven governance and services, one slide from the PowerPoint presentation beamed. Right, I don't know where the Palestinians are going to live. Well, who's going to govern them? AI is going to govern them, I guess. Wow, I didn't know that. Tech-driven governance and services. Not ideological, because we know where that goes. So we're going to AI it. Artificial ideology instead. Okay, sure. The ambitious proposal, never mind the part like, do you consent to be governed by a computer and we program the computer? Are you even alive? Are you even here? I don't know. Well, no. Okay. Well, then, golly, I guess we'll leave. I don't think so. The ambitious proposal developed within the last 45 days by Kushner, Witkoff, and the White House aides, consulted Israeli security experts about the path forward, further called for the establishing of a chief digital office and an innovation lab to define standards and guide policymaking. Sure, gotta have one of those. The presentation does not go into detail about which countries or companies would be investing in the rebuilding fund, according to the WSJ. This is a pitch deck. We mean, who are you talking to about the money? They're not going to put that in there. They don't have any commitments from anybody. Though the plan mapped out distinct phases of construction, it did not provide details for housing the 2 million Palestinians who would be displaced during the massive construction that's necessary to do this. There's also, by the way, an estimated 68 million tons of rubble in Gaza after, thousands of Israeli airstrikes leveled cities during the 2-year war in Gaza. U.S. officials who have knowledge of the proposal are skeptical that it will come to fruition because the condition would be, oh yeah, by the way, page 2, Hamas has to agree to disarm. Oh, that is a big thing. They'll disarm at the implementation area. Witkoff, meanwhile, met Saturday in Miami with high-level delegations from Egypt, Turkey, and Qatar to discuss implementation for the second phase, not of this thing, but of the Gaza ceasefire plan. And guess what? I'm imagining the second phase of the ceasefire plan is, okay, can we now adopt the first phase of this construction plan? Because we got to build a sphere in Gaza. And then the fountains of Bellagio as well have to be recreated. So, all right. I mean, I think we knew that was the plan. I just found it interesting that, this is still a thing you can do in this country, is walk in with a PowerPoint plan that doesn't have anything to do with anything and just say, I don't know, give me money. I'm talking to fans of the development of artificial waterfronts with high-tech cities from out of nowhere. They're going to back another idea about a high-tech city arising from nowhere in the Middle East, right? Maybe. And if it doesn't work, you name it Bilbo Baggins and you go see the other guys. Anyway, that I thought was of some interest, and you might like to hear about it. We don't have time to tell you about that crazy company that keeps coming to mind while I'm talking about all this, but perhaps we can get to that later in the week. I'll throw this one out there. This one we're also not going to have very much time for, but I wanted to put it in the mix, even though we'll run out of time. Samuel Wynn Ward. Samuel Wynn Ward has a Substack called The Art of Living, about which I know nothing. Sam is, he says, unapologetically liberal. So that's good. That's nice. But he's got an idea about the nature of the trade relationship as it now stands between us and Canada. That's very important. Canada, he says, flips the script and hits Trump where it hurts the most. This is the art of the self-own. What's going on? Donald Trump, as you know, has always operated with the sophisticated geopolitical strategy of a mob boss, collecting protection money. He assumes that leverage is a one-way street where the loud dictate terms and the quiet submit. This worldview crashed into a wall of reality in 2025 when Canada, America's polite northern neighbor, finally decided to stop apologizing and fighting back. Trump assumed that Canada had no choice but to fold. He believed that trade dependence was a leash he could yank whenever he wanted a concession. He was wrong. And in the process of being wrong, he didn't just lose a trade skirmish. Trump suffered a humiliation that strikes at the only thing he truly cares about, his ego. The deal maker got outplayed by a technocrat. The strong man got muscled by the nice guy. Canada didn't just survive Trump's pressure campaign, they exposed him as a strategic amateur. What happened here? Well, we're not going to have that much time to tell you, as it turns out, so it's a bit of a teaser here. But to understand how badly Trump miscalculated, you have to understand the ultimatum he issued. His team arrogantly termed it a final demand. No negotiation. It was just an attempt at extortion. Trump demanded that Canada restrict its exports of critical materials, things like aluminum, steel, rare minerals, to other nations, unless American companies were given preferential access at below market prices. I don't think I even heard that this was supposed to be the terms of the deal. It sounds pretty stupid. Why would anyone agree to it? Essentially, Trump wanted Canada to subsidize American industry by selling its own resources at a loss. He expected Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney to bow down and kiss the ring, and instead Carney looked the bully in the eye and delivered a masterclass in bureaucratic warfare. Here is the part Trump didn't understand, all of it. The American economy runs on just-in-time manufacturing models. The factories in Ohio and Michigan don't keep weeks of inventory in warehouses anymore. They rely on parts crossing the border exactly when they are needed. This system requires speed, trust, and massive voluntary coordination between customs officials on both sides to keep the goods flowing without paperwork delays. You know how he is about paperwork. When Canada rejected that final demand, they didn't need to declare a trade war. They simply stopped doing the extra work. They withdrew from voluntary coordination protocols. They decided to work to the rule, applying every single bureaucratic check and regulation to the letter. The result was immediate chaos for the very America First industries Trump claimed to save. Automotive plants in the Midwest found their supply lines severed by red tape. Construction projects stalled as Canadian lumber sat in inspection queues. Wow. That's a pretty cool move, actually. Pretty simplistic, too.
You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Walton.
So there you go. Trump tried to hold a gun to Canada's head only to realize too late, they say, that his neighbor controlled the ammunition. It turns out that when you declare war on your logistics partner, you stop getting your deliveries. That's a good point. We actually managed to fit it in there, too. There's more good points coming, too, as Justice Putnam takes the wheel next, right here on Netroots Radio.